Hey, what is up guys, my name is Luis. Today we're comparing the Krig against the FARA. So with all the changes to the Cold War rifles, we're going to see how these two stack up against each other. In this video, you will see a comparison with stats, best attachments, recoil patterns and more. If this is your first time here, I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button as I make tips and tricks in Warzone and much more. Let's look at the weapon stats here. The Krig has an ADS speed of 263 milliseconds and the FARA comes in at 296 milliseconds. Movement speed of the Krig is 4.81 meters per second and the FARA clocks in at 4.67 meters per second. So when looking at the reload speed, the Krig reloads in 2.34 seconds and the FARA reloads in 3.17 seconds. The rate of fire for the Krig is 652 rounds per minute and the FARA comes in at 790 rounds per minute. So as we can see, they are pretty similar, but let's take a look at the damage profile. The Krig does 45 damage to the head, which means it's going to take 6 shots to down a fully plated enemy. The FARA does 40 damage to the head, which means it's going to take 7 shots to down a fully plated enemy. Also note that this is the damage for the first base damage fall off, and the Krig offers up more range before dropping off. Looking at the second damage drop off, we can see that the Krig still has the upper hand on the FARA. Looking at the damage for the chest, stomach and extremities, we can see that they are pretty equal, but the Krig has a small edge on all the values except for the extremities where the FARA offers up 1 more damage. For the second damage drop off, we can see that the difference is not huge, but the Krig offers up more damage overall. Let's take a look at the TTK for these weapons. The Krig comes in at 523 milliseconds to the head and the FARA comes in at 501 milliseconds. For the chest, the Krig comes in at 707 milliseconds and the FARA comes in at 653. Since we're talking about the long range builds in this video, let's take a look at the long range TTK, and by that I mean the TTK after the first damage drop off. The Krig comes in at 615 milliseconds to the head and the FARA comes in at 577 milliseconds. For the chest, the Krig comes in at 799 milliseconds and the FARA comes in at 729 milliseconds. So let's check out the recoil pattern. We have the Krig to the left and the FARA to the right. So as you can see, the Krig has pretty much the easiest recoil pattern to control, as we are only dealing with vertical recoil, and note that this is without the field agent grip, so there's really no need to actually use this. The FARA also has a pretty easy recoil pattern to control, but as we can see, the FARA is going a bit to the left, but not that much. Both weapons have good recoil patterns that should be very easy to control. Let's look at the attachments and I'm going to show you what the differences are after the weapons are fully kitted out. I also want to note that these attachments are for long range builds. With the Cold War weapons being so versatile now, you can pretty much build them as sniper support, long range or even SMGs. So for the Krig, we take the agency suppressor, mil-spec barrel, 3x scope, 60 round mag, and I use the airborne elastic wrap for that boost in ADS speed. And as you saw on the recoil pattern, there is no need to use a field agent grip with this build. For the FARA, we take the GRU suppressor, RPK barrel, 3x scope, 60 round mag, and I use the airborne elastic wrap here as well. So let's see what weapon changes this actually gives us compared to a stock weapon. For the range, both weapons are gaining 49% range. The ADS speed will always increase as we increase the bullet velocity and range, so here the Krig goes up to 305 milliseconds and the FARA goes up to 334 milliseconds. For the bullet velocity, the Krig ends up at 1136 meters per second and the FARA ends up at 1125 meters per second. Let's jump into my final thoughts on these weapons. Since we are looking at the weapons as a range build, the deciding factor for me is the long range TTK. The FARA has a long range TTK of 729 milliseconds and the Krig comes in at 799 milliseconds. Through my testing, I can see that the FARA has a faster TTK across the board, both in the short and long range. I will say that the recoil of the Krig is insanely good. It practically has no recoil at all, and that makes the weapon very easy to handle. Even at longer distances, the Krig is very easy to control. Having said that, the FARA is also very good right now. I think the Krig has slightly less recoil than the FARA, but the FARA is also pretty good right now. The recoil of the FARA is very easy to control as well. For the long range build, the Krig has better ADS speed as we saw previously, but at long range the ADS speed is not the most important, and they are pretty close to each other anyways. Personally, I would take the FARA right now. It has a better TTK, and even though I really enjoy using the Krig because of the recoil pattern, the FARA still has the best TTKs and the recoil pattern is very easy to control. Let me know in the comments what you prefer. That is it for this video guys. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't, and as always, I will see you legends in the next one.